Yes, hi and welcome to 24 Hours of PaaS Summit Preview. We are glad you could join us today for Catherine Williams' session, Tools and Tips from Accidental to Efficient Data Warehouse Developer. The 24 Hours of PaaS event consists of 24 consecutive live webinars delivered by expert speakers from the PaaS community. And the sessions will be recorded and posted online after the event, and they can be found on 24hoursofpaas.com. My name is Christian, and I'll be the moderator today. I'm a full stack developer, and so this session is also something which I find interesting. Before we go to the speak, we have to go through some introductory slides before. Yes, if you need technical assistance, you can type into the question pane marked, which you can find in the right of the screen, and we will try to assist you. You will also be able to zoom on the presentation or by the zoom button, also it's found in the top of the presentation window. Please note there will be some evaluation after the session, so please give your feedback, and I know it's highly appreciated. We would also like to thank our sponsors, Quest, Melissa, Nutanix. Without their support, 24 Hours of PaaS will not be possible. So they're the reason you can see these sessions for free. Yes, also make sure to go into the paas.org webpage and see what PaaS has to offer you. There's a lot of communities, online groups you can join, virtual chapters. There's a lot of speaks, and there's so much stuff to learn from. Next. Yes, and something I'm looking forward to, I would like to put your attention to the upcoming PaaS Summit. It will be taking place in Seattle, Washington from the October 31st to the November 3rd. The PaaS Summit 2017 features over 200 sessions with world-class data experts. It's a perfect place to connect, share, and learn from the industry experts from around the world. To find out more, visit paassummit.com. Yes. And now here, I would like to hand over the speak to Catherine, and enjoy the session.
Thank you so much, Christian. Thank you for moderating my session here today. And
welcome
to everyone who's watching this either live or the recording afterwards. Thank you so much for tuning into my session here today. I'll start by saying some quick words about myself. My name is Katrine Wilhelmsen, or Catherine Wilhelmsen. I'm from Norway. I currently work as a PaaS community evangelist and SQL Saturday coordinator, coordinating all the SQL Saturdays around the world. But my main experience in the past has been as a data warehouse architect and a business intelligence developer, which is when I created this session mainly for my coworkers and others who were in my kind of situation. So hopefully they can learn more in less time than I spent learning all of these things. I'm a Microsoft Data Platform MVP, and I'm also a BIML Hero certified expert. You can find my blog on catherinew.net, and you can follow me on Twitter at catherinew. Just please note that there is no E in the middle of my name there. That's the funny Scandinavian spelling of my name. So that was a quick introduction of myself, but this session really is all about you guys and how you can improve your workday. So usually when I present this live, I like to ask the audience who they are and get a feeling of what their background is. I can't do that in a webinar, so I've made a couple of assumptions about the people watching this session. So the first thing, like I mentioned in the previously, is that I created this session mainly for coworkers and people in my situation. And those are people who have a couple of years experience working with data warehouses and business intelligence, and they're mainly focusing on T-SQL development and SSIS development. So this session here today is based on that kind of profile for the audience. If that's not you, then maybe you might still pick up some tips and tricks here and there, or maybe you can use this session and share it with your own coworkers afterwards so they can learn something from it. So let me just start by telling my background story. So once upon a time, I was straight out of university. I actually had a bachelor degree in Java programming. Don't tell everyone that. Let's keep it a secret between us. And I was actually hired as a SharePoint consultant, believe it or not. Again, a secret between just us. When I got hired, they intended me to start working on a SharePoint project, but they couldn't actually find a project for me when I started working. So they came back and they told me that, you know, we have a different kind of project. It's still using the Microsoft technologies, but we would like you to start working on a data warehouse project. And me being, you know, fresh out of school, very excited, I said, super, that's awesome. I can't wait to start. And then I went back home and I did this. I Googled, what is a data warehouse? I had never heard about data warehousing before. I've heard about business intelligence, but I did not know what a data warehouse was. I had not heard about facts or dimensions or data marts or anything like that. So I really just kind of got, you know, put into this project where I had to learn everything from day one. And how I felt back then is kind of like this little guy you can see on the screen right here. I had all these different buttons and things that I had to learn, you know, and different, you know, tools like SSMS and SSDT. And I was, at points, I was just, you know, randomly just pushing buttons to see what they did. And sometimes it worked out well. Sometimes I made some mistakes. But that's not really the person I want to be. I want to be more like this guy here, who is completely in control. He's multitasking, he has 8 arms, and he knows exactly what he is doing. And that is still my goal. I'm not quite there yet, but I've made some progress from that first time I started working on data warehousing projects. So the main reason for doing all of this is because I want to be as efficient as possible in my work. By that, I mean what it says on the screen right here, performing or functioning in the best possible manner with the least waste of time and effort. And all of this boils down to being productive, being efficient, and delivering as much value as possible for your employer or your client. So what we're going to go through here today are some of the tips and tricks and tools that I'm using that I've learned over the years that hopefully can help you get to that point of the 8-handed multitasking expert faster than what I have been able to do over the last few years. So we're going to go through 3 main things here today. The first thing is SSMS, SQL Server Management Studio. We're going to look at some tips and tricks, some shortcuts, and how you can actually use that tool to become more efficient in your workday. Then we're going to look at some things that you can do in terms of tuning and analyzing queries. This is a big part of many data warehouse developers' workday, and being aware of some of these things will actually help speed up your own workday. And finally, my favorite topic personally, BIML for SSIS, how you can automate and generate packages instead of having to manually drag and drop and create SSIS packages. So if you're still with me here, let's get started on the first tip. So we'll start out with SSMS, and we're going to look at some visual information. And like I mentioned in the introduction slides here, some of this might be familiar to you, some of it might be new. If all of this is familiar and you know all of this, share it with someone else you think can have use of it. So let's start with connecting to servers. When you connect to servers, you can actually click the little options button, as you can see highlighted on the screen there. And then you have a couple of different options. You can see on the top, you can connect to a database, and then you can set a default database. You don't have to go in and switch that from master to something else, for example. It can save you a couple of clicks here and there. But the most important thing on the screen is the custom colors. You can select a custom color for that server. So when you open up a query, you will see at the bottom of the window, you will see that the little status bar there has actually changed color from the default to this green color here for my development server. And I recommend if you're ever connecting to production servers, make sure you use a bright red color or something that's very easy for you to spot that you're working in a production environment. This is just a very easy way of quickly seeing what kind of environment you're working on just by looking at the color on the screen. You don't have to read which database or which server you're connected to. And then we have the status bar, like I mentioned, the green status bar down there, and the tab text. What I recommend is that you go in and you look at the settings by going to Tools, Options, Text Editor, and Editor tab, and Status bar, as you can see on the left-hand side of the screen there. Take a look at the different kind of options and tweak this to make it work for you. I personally like to show all the information in the status bar so I can see the database name, login name, the server name, the row count, and execution times. But for my tabs, as you can see on the top there, the default setting is to actually include the database name, include the login name, and include the server name. And you can see from the blue tab there, it's not really that easy to see. You can't see all of it anyway. So I prefer to turn all of those options off and just show the file name, as you can see on the right-hand tab there, called product.sql. I don't really need to see all the other information in my tabs. If you choose to do it the other way around, that's completely up to you. But just be aware that you can change these settings to make it work for you so it's easier for you to work and quickly switch between tabs and so on. Now, when you're executing queries, the default behavior in SSMS is that it shows the results in a pane on the bottom half of your screen. So the bottom of half of your screen is covered by the results. Now you can actually go in and change this as well if you look at the options and you go to results to grid. And also just a quick note here, if you think it's difficult to navigate and look through all of these options here, in the newer versions of SSMS, you also have the search options bar up here, where you can actually start typing in results or grid or some keyword, and that will filter this list for you. It just makes it a little easier to find what you're looking for. But what you can do is that you can set your settings to display results in a separate tab, and you can automatically switch to the results tab after the query executes. And this could be a good way of getting that full screen view of results if you need to do some ad hoc analysis or something like that. Or if you're a presenter like me and you have to go through this in these settings, this might be a better option for you. Again, you have to make sure that you set up this environment to make it work for you. And then we have just a couple of different options, for looking at the different tabs that you have open. And I'm personally a tab hoarder. I have usually I have at least 10 tabs open at any given time. And when I start typing in, one query and I execute that and I have to wait for some results, I very quickly move on to another query and start working on that. So switching back and forth. And instead of having to actually go and click and switch between these tabs all the time, I like to split my tabs and show multiple tabs on the screen at the same time. So you can do that by right-clicking on the tab and clicking on New Vertical Group, as shown here, or you can actually just click and drag the tab and move it around on the screen. That is a little difficult to show with just a screenshot, but just click and drag the tab and you will quickly see how you can move it around the screen. So I prefer to show my tabs vertically like here. You can, of course, place them horizontally. You can, have 4 queries open at a time if you want that. It's completely up to you, but the options are there. And then this one here is probably the first feature that I found out about a while after I started working with SSMS, where you have a split function that actually allows you to split one query into two different windows. So you can either go from window and click split, or there's this little tiny button up here. It starts up in the top right of your query editor. And you can just click that button and drag it up and down. And then this little line here separating the two query windows will show up so you can drag and drop this. And the cool thing about this is that if you have, for example, a very long query or a stored procedure, and you might be working on the select statement and the where or group by statements at the same time, you can do that without having to scroll up and down. And when you start typing in the top window, if you're at the same location in the bottom window, you will actually see the live typing there as well. It's just a way of working on a large query or procedure without having to spend that time scrolling up and down. So a very handy trick there if you haven't seen it before. And then one of the newer features in the newer versions of SSMS is that you can actually pin tabs. So if you have some queries that are very important or that you execute frequently, you can pin that tab. And in the settings, you can choose to show these pin tabs in a separate row. You can also choose to show or hide the pin button. And this just makes it a little easier to find those important tabs if you're like me and you have many queries open at the same time. Those will always be pinned in a separate row, so they're easy to find. So the next tip, all of that was looking at the visual information and how you can rearrange things on your screen to make it a little easier to work with SSMS. So the next tip here is how to use different shortcuts when you're working in SSMS. So what you can do, you can create your own query shortcuts by going to this tools and options again. And what you can see in the list is some of these shortcuts are defined already, such as SP-help and SP-who and SP-lock. So you can't really change those. But you do have a couple of different options there. So in my case, I've added SP-who is active, which I will get back to later in the session. And under Control 3 and Control 4, I've mapped select top 1000 star from and select count star from. And by doing this, I can actually just select a table name from a query and then press Control 3 and Control 4 to see the top 1000 rows or the row count for that table. And this just quickly allows me to get an overview of the kind of tables I'm working on without having to go in and type a separate query and type select top 1000 or select count star from. And you can tweak this. And just a little warning, I usually don't recommend running a select count star in production. There are other ways you can do that by querying the partitions and so on. But in terms of development and when you're working on local data, it's completely fine to use that just to get a quick overview of the amount of data you're working on, for example. And then the next one is where you can create your own keyboard shortcuts. And one of the first things I do when I install a new version of SSMS is I go in and I remove the shortcuts that I accidentally click all the time. For example, highlighted here, debug step into, it's by default mapped to F11. I've lost count of how many times I've clicked that button accidentally and, things started happening on my screen. So I go in and I remove all of those shortcuts and I rebind them to something that works better for me. And then a couple of my favorites here is actually shown in this little cheat sheet by Andy Mallon. So you can go to Andy's website, am2.co/shortcuts, and he has this PDF that you can download, print out, and keep next to your screen or on your desk. It's a very handy little cheat sheet there. And as you can see under the SSMS query shortcuts in the middle there, you can actually just fill out the blanks with your own preferences there. And keep this handy until all of this is, in your fingers and your muscle memory when you get used to using that. So thank you to Andy for creating that for all of us to download and use. Now, what you can see on the screen, these are what I like to call the magic keys: Shift, Tab, Control, Alt, Home and Page Up and Page Down, plus the arrow keys. If you start working by using the keyboard instead of using your mouse to, click and drag and drop and so on, you might actually experience that your development time goes down because you get more efficient by using these things. And I've had some interesting moments where I've been working and typing queries and I accidentally, I clicked Alt or a Shift or a combination of any of these tabs and something happened and I had to go in and figure out, and then I realized that that was actually a very smart keyboard shortcut. So take a look at all the different options that you can use. And just to show you some of my favorites here, just to show you what you can actually do, by pressing Control R, you can quickly show and hide the query results. And again, this might make it easier if you have that long query and you don't want the results covering up all of that. Just press Control R and it will be hidden until you execute that query or press Control R again. You can toggle full screen by pressing Shift, Alt, Enter. This will just blow up the actual query window to a full screen. So if you do have that standard layout in SSMS where you might have the Object Explorer and you might have a Solution Explorer or anything else that you have on your screen, or if you prefer to have, a lot of toolbars displaying, then doing this just allows you to blow up the query into full screen and focus on working on that query instead of being distracted by everything else. It also works if you're working on a smaller laptop with a smaller screen resolution because it gives you more space to actually type your query. So most of you are probably familiar when you're using Windows that you can use Alt-Tab to cycle through the different applications that you have open. And you can do that in SSMS as well inside SSMS by using Control-Tab instead of Alt-Tab. So by using Control-Tab, you will display this little window pop up here, and then you can use the arrows to move back and forth between the active tool windows and the active files that you currently have open. So if you're typing a query and you need to get to the Object Explorer, just press Control Tab and the arrows, and then you're good to go. And another quick hint that I learned quite early was if you start typing a query and you type select star from, and then you realize that I'm in the master database or something like that, you're in the wrong database. So what I used to do was move my hands from the keyboard over to my mouse and then up to that little drop down, find the right database, and then back to my query window to continue typing. And then I realized I don't have to do that. I can just press Control U, start typing the name of the database I want to connect to, press Enter, and then I can continue typing in my query window. Now, this might save you, a second or two by doing it this way, but it is quite a lot of time saved if you have to do that, very often in your workday. So another nice little tip there for you. And this one here might be my favorite, column or multi-line editing. People call it different things. The point of this is instead of selecting entire rows, you can select columns in SSMS. You can either do that by holding Alt and dragging your mouse in the window, or you can use Alt-Shift and the buttons up and down to select the columns. So you can see in my screenshot there where I have class, color, date, disco, and so on, highlighted with yellow. If I start typing there, I will actually start overriding all the yellow and start typing on each of those lines. So this is a very fancy feature. And something that you can use this for that I actually hadn't thought about myself until a couple of months ago during a SQL Server user group meeting is if you have, for example, an update statement or a select statement and it's commented out with the default -- comments, you can use this to select just the query itself and then execute it instead of having to uncomment and comment before you execute it. So a very nice little tip there that I recently just picked up. And again, moving on with comment and comment, you don't have to type the dashes, manually. Really stop doing that if you're doing that. Learn how to use the comment and uncomment keyboard shortcuts. So by just having your cursor on a line, press Control K and C, and then that will comment the line for you, and Control K and U to uncomment. And you can do that when you have multiple lines selected as well. This just makes it a lot easier. There are also some buttons on the toolbar if you prefer to use buttons instead of keyboard shortcuts, but again, I prefer to use the keyboard as much as possible. And this was something that when I started, I didn't know about this, so I could, I would write dash dash and then go down a line and write dash dash again, and then I would backspace backspace or delete delete, and that just takes too much time. Learn how to use the tool for what it's worth. And then we have another feature that's, I honestly can't remember when this was introduced in SSMS, but I only found out about this maybe a year or two ago, where you have something called the clipboard ring in SSMS. So if you spend a lot of time copying and pasting text, what I used to do was, you would go back and forth, copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste. But in SSMS, this clipboard ring actually saves the last 20 items that you copied. So if you know that you need to copy and paste several times, you can just go in and copy, 4 different things. And then when you're pasting, instead of just using Control V, add that shift. So you're using Control Shift V, and then you just keep pressing V until the text that you want is pasted into your query. And that, again, is a very cool feature, and it can save you a lot of time if you do a lot of copy and pasting. And then finally, in the newer versions of SSMS, you have something called Quick Launch. You may have seen that little search bar on top of your SSMS window there. And what you can do is you can start typing. Maybe you want to find some settings, maybe you want something from the menus and you can't remember if it's under view or window or something like that. Just start typing a keyword and you will get this list of all the different things that you can choose from in SSMS. It has a lot of features, so I'm not going to cover all of those, but just do a quick search for a Quick Launch in SSMS and look at all the different options that you have for using that. Again, it might speed up time because you can start typing for keywords instead of having to look through menus on your own. So the next tip here, search in SSMS. There are several free tools. My preference is Redgate. I use the Redgate tools. So Redgate SQL Search allows you to search through all these different objects that you can see. Tables, views, procedures, constraints, triggers, functions, and so on. You can search across databases and servers. And when you search for something, in this case right here where I've searched for color, you can right-click and click Select in Object Explorer, and that will take you directly to that object. Make sure that if you don't have any of these free add-ons installed, go and take a look at all the different ones, try them out, and pick the one that works for you. If you don't have those, go and install it right away. There are some licensed tools and there are some free tools. Searching like this is a huge time saver, so go ahead and do that if you can. So number 4, templates and snippets. Templates, if you're not aware, SSMS has a template browser built in that you can open by pressing Control-Alt-T. And you can see that on the upper left-hand side there. All these different templates that you can use so you don't have to remember all of these query syntaxes on your own. So what you do is you just click on one of these templates, drag it into a query window, and then you will see that Create Index Basic Template, for example. And you can also create your own templates like this if you have a specific, way of writing stored procedures or something. Create a template instead of, working from scratch each time. And inside of these templates, you have different parameters that you can actually replace with actual values. So press Control-Shift-M, and then you will see the value there. Just type in the actual value that you want to use in the script, and then you can save and execute it. Quick warning again there, if you create your own templates, don't use production default values for these values. Use something that won't work until people go in and actually overwrite it, so you don't accidentally execute something that you don't want to do. There are also a bunch of different snippets that you can use. So instead of using the template, you can use these snippets either by inserting snippets in this upper example where you can create index basic again, or you can select some code and click on surround with snippet, and then you can insert, begin end blocks, if else, or while loops. Again, it saves you just a couple of seconds here and there instead of having to type all of this on your own. So go in and take a look at the templates and snippets and see how that works for you. And again, just like with the search, there are a lot of different applications and vendors providing advanced snippets and formatting. So I've provided a short list here that you can go and take a look at. And these slides will be available online after this webinar is finished. You can go and take a look at it there. Go in and try these out and see which one works for you. They mainly have the same features, but they differ on small things here and there. So just go and find the one that works for you. And my personal application of choice is Redgate SQL Prompt. It's something I've been using for years, and I honestly can't do my job anymore without using it. So I just wanted to show you a couple of things that you can do if you do install one of these formatting and snippet add-ons. So let me just switch over to my SSMS window here and open up one of these queries and show you a couple of things that you can do when you have one of these add-ons installed. So the first one up here is where you can get code suggestions and column pickers. So you do have IntelliSense built in SSMS, but a lot of these applications are quite advanced. So if I press Control Space here, you will see this list of columns showing up, where I can go and select either of these columns. I can see information like the time, the keys, and so on. But it also has this column picker. You can see at the bottom there it says Control arrow to switch to the column picker. So that's what I'm going to do. And that shows me all the columns in two different options. So right here now, I have them listed alphabetically. Might be easier if you're working on large tables to find what you want. Or I can choose to list these in table order. But if I do want them alphabetically, I just click space and then arrow down to select the columns that I want and click enter, and that's inserted into my query here. Another thing is I can also just type star and it says press tab to expand wildcard. So if I do that, it will actually insert all of these columns for me. And this is, again, just very time-saving compared to having to type all of this manually. Now, you can actually, if you're not aware of it, if you go into one of these tables, so let's see, production product, and if you don't have an add-on installed, or if you're not able to install any add-ons for security reasons and so on, you can actually just click on this columns and drag it in, and it will insert all of these for you. So there is an option if you're not able to actually install any of these add-ons. Just a quick tip for you there. And then we do have, just like search, you can also select an object explorer by highlighting one of these columns and then pressing Control F12. You will see that we're taken directly to that, either the table or the column or something else in the Object Explorer. If you do need to navigate quickly between scripts in the Object Explorer, it might be easier to do that than having to do what I did earlier where you have to navigate all the way down. And then there are a couple of different options in terms of formatting and style preferences and so on. So in this case here, where I have a query where I'm joining two tables, but I can't really tell the columns which tables they are from. So I can select this query, click on Control B, Control Q, and that will actually insert these object names for me, or qualify these object names. That just really helps. And if I want to rename some of this, I just click F2 and I say SO detail instead, click enter. And that renames it all over my query here. Very, very simple to use. And then finally, we have, some more style guidelines. Some people might prefer this way of typing. Other people might prefer the complete opposite. And then you have a couple of different options here. So you can, apply casing by uppercasing or lowercasing. You can add or remove brackets, and you can insert semicolons at the end. Now, pressing Control B and Control C, it might be easier to just type the semicolon there manually, but you can actually do this across multiple statements. So it inserts that in all your 20 statements, for example. And then instead of doing what I just did manually by step-by-step uppercasing and removing brackets and so on, there's also this option of formatting everything just with a couple of keystrokes. So in this case here, where I have this query that is almost impossible to read, at least for me, what I can do is I can just press Control-K-Y. And based on the styles that I've defined, you can see that it actually reformats the entire query for me here. And suddenly it's a lot easier to go through and read and actually see what's going on in this query. And then just showing another thing, if you are working with longer scripts, you can do things like summarize script, where I press Control-B, Control-S, and that will show me just how, like the outline of my script. So I can see alter procedure has a try and a catch has a print, execute, and return. The try has if statements, and so on. So if you're starting to work on a new project or something like that, you can quickly go in and get an overview of what you're actually looking at without having to dig through all the code on your own. Then we have, this is not a feature that is available in all the add-ons, but in terms of using Redgate SQL Prompt, you also have all of these tab history that you can go in and look at. So what I have here is currently all the tabs that I've opened recently. I can navigate to my open tabs and switch between those, and I can look at the tabs that I've recently closed. And I can start typing, for example, color, and it will show me just the tabs where I've actually searched for that. So another very quick thing that you can do to navigate instead of having to open and reopen scripts from different locations in your environment. And finally, we have this snippet manager and action list. This is something that you can find in a lot of tools. So instead of having to write this query, you can start typing STF, for example, and that will show you the snippet here saying select top 1000 star from fragment. And then when I press tab, it just inserts that for me. And when you start getting used to working with these snippets instead of typing all of this by hand, you're going to see that you're saving a ton of time. So again, go in and take a look at all the different applications that you can install. It might not be SQL Prompt, and we might want to use some of the other ones, but do try and install some of these add-ons if you can, because it's going to save you a bunch of time. So moving on, you can also do something called registered servers and multi-server queries. Now this might be a little too specific use case for everyone, but you can go in and add these registered servers. So I've added my dev, test, and production servers for my data marts and my data warehouse. And this allows me to quickly go and see if the server is up and running. And it also allows me to manage those services if you do have permissions to do that by starting and stopping the different services. And you can also write these multi-server queries where you can right-click on the entire group of servers, type new query, and again, there's a setting for changing the connection color there. I've chosen this beautiful deep pink color here in my example. And by typing just one query, you can actually query all of those servers at once. So for example, if you want to go and check something in dev and test and compare, row counts after executions or something like that, this might be easier to do than having to go in and open up multiple query windows and execute those queries multiple times. And then moving on to more of the queries themselves, Sargable queries. Now this is a topic that you can do an entire session or maybe even a full day pre-con about just these queries. But this was something that I was not aware of when I started working with data warehousing because I didn't have all of that formal training in terms of how SQL Server worked. So just to show you a quick example here, sargable queries are queries where it can efficiently seek using an index to find the rows searched for in the where or join clauses. And let's just pretend that we use a phone book and take a look at how this works in theory. So a sargable query is, for example, when you want to find all the rows where the name starts with a T. And for us, this is easy as humans because we know that the alphabet starts with an A and we go all the way to Z, or the letter O if you're in Norway. But we do know that T is pretty close to the end of the alphabet. And the same thing with an index, it can quickly find what you're looking for. So finding all the rows where the name starts with a T is very simple. It's a sargable query. But then you have the non-sargable queries. This is where the query, by using something in the where or the join clause, for example, using a function, where it has to scan each row to find the rows that you're searching for. And in this case here, if we want to find all the rows where the name contains AL, that suddenly becomes a lot more difficult than finding the ones that start with a T, because now we need to go through each line by line and see, does this contain AL? Does this contain AL? Does this contain AL? And you have to go through. And it just takes a lot of work because you can't quickly find these rows. And I'm sure that some of you may have already seen all of these rows, but for most people, it would take some time to find all of these rows. And the same thing with how SQL Server works. Try to write those sargable queries to make sure that they execute quickly. And like I said, this is a topic that you can probably talk for an hour about, which Rob Farley has already done at a SQL Bits in the past. So I've linked to the session here where he explains this in detail. It's a great session, and Rob is a very smart guy. So if you want to learn more about this, go and check out his session from SQL Bits. So for a query analysis, with execution plans, you can display estimated execution plans, and you can include actual execution plans after executing a query. You can either click on the buttons up on the toolbar or press Control-L or Control-M. Execution plans basically just show you how a query will be executed. And for new developers, this is a great way of digging into how the query will be executed. You can look at the details and the tooltips by hovering over all of these icons, or you can look at the properties window. And this is a great way to see where you might have to spend time optimizing your query to make your data warehouse loads go faster, for example. So take a look at that, see that, we have, a scan instead of a seek. Maybe that's an issue, or maybe you're doing some different kinds of joins that you can optimize by doing more, set-based queries instead of recursive queries or anything like that. And again, this is another one of those topics that you can talk about for days, probably. One of the newer features is using live query statistics as well. You can map this to a keyboard shortcut if you want to, but this basically shows you the execution live. And I know that through GoToWebinar here in this recording, you might not be able to see it, but this query actually executes right now, where you can see all the data moving and how much is done and so on. Just a fun little thing. If you have a long running query, you can actually see what's going on instead of just waiting for it to finish. And there are free tools that you can use to help learning and digging into execution plans. SentryOne has a tool called Plan Explorer. It's completely free, and it just improves that visual look of the query plan. So you can see here where the thicker lines are is where more data is being moved through. Where you have the yellow colors, you might have to go in and take a look at how you can optimize that, and so on. And they actually have on a website called SQLperformance.com, you can anonymize and post your execution plans to get help and tips from experts. And these are real-world experts who spend their free time helping people in the community. So if you're stuck on something, go and ask them and take advantage of this website. And finally, there's a book that you can download for free from redgate.com, written by Grant Fritchie, who's actually the upcoming past president as well called SQL Server Execution Plans that you can read through and learn more about this. Tip number 8, query statistics. So we looked at how we can look at the execution plans, but what about the statistics for the queries themselves? So you can set things like statistics IO on, showing you all the different logical reads, physical reads, scan counts, and so on. You can also see the statistics time, the CPU time, elapsed time, and so on. Or you can combine these by set statistics time, comma, IO on and off. This is just a way to help you, before and after tuning a query, for example. Will you get fewer logical reads? Will you get a shorter elapsed time, and so on? Just helps you to see those statistics on the screen instead of sitting with a stopwatch or something like that, which is pretty impossible nowadays. And there's another free tool out there called Statistics Parser by Richie Rump on statisticsparser.com, where you can just copy and paste the results from the previous windows that I showed you into a website tool, and it will just give you this nice little view where you can sort on the columns, and it's just much easier to see it in this way than in the standard SSMS window. And then finally, for statistics, something that I wasn't aware of until I've been working for a couple of years, you can also choose to include client statistics when you're executing queries. So you can press Shift-Alt-S or go from the query menu. And what this does is it actually saves the results of your query executions. So you can see up here, I'm using, I have trial 1, trial 2, and trial 3. And if you're performance tuning your data warehouse loads, for example, you can see how many rows are returned, or client processing time, and so on. And you can see if you're going up and down. So instead of writing things on Post-it or a notepad, you can just include the client statistics, and it will take care of all of this for you. Then tip number 9, activity monitoring. And this is something that I mentioned earlier with my keyboard shortcuts. The free script SPWhoisActive by Atom Mechanic. It's probably one of the most installed scripts out there. By running this, you will see what is happening on your server right now. So if you have a lot of selects, updates, inserts, or if you're working in a data warehouse environment with, several developments, several packages running at the same time, and you might end up something locking and blocking, this is a great tool to go in and take a look at what's happening, what is blocking the current processes, and it has a ton of information. So you can see all the wait info, you can see, which sessions are blocking each other, how long the queries have been running, and even which programs are actually running that query. So for me, when I first started, this was a lot of information to take in, but it also helped me learn a ton about the different lock types and the wait info and so on, and also helped me figure out why is my data warehouse load taking so long. Oh, it's actually because things are locking and blocking and hanging for a while. So go and take a look at that script, install it, and use it when you're working on your projects. And then finally here today, my favorite topic, SSIS with BIML. When you have to create SSIS packages, you do spend a lot of time dragging and dropping and creating those packages manually if you do it by traditional SSIS development. With BIML, you can do it like this little cat right here. Of course, I can create 200 SSIS packages. What do you need me to do after lunch? And it really can be that time saving. So BIML stands for Business Intelligence Markup Language. It's an easy to read and write XML language where you can generate SSIS packages from metadata from your source database. And what you will need is a free add-in called BIML Express. You can find it on the creators of BIML's website that you can see on the screen there, or you can use BIML Online, which is a free online editor in the cloud. So all of these, or both of these tools are completely free that you can go and use. And the way this works is you write a BIML file, you run it through the BIML compiler, basically just you're saying that you want to generate the SSIS packages, and it spits out the packages for you. And just to show you very quickly here, my last demo here today, how this works, I'm going to move over to my Visual Studio. And what you can see here is I've created an SSIS project but I don't have any SSIS packages yet. What I do have are all these different BIML files here that I've already created. So take a look. Let's take a look at how one of these work. So just to show you very quick and basic example here for BIML, this code, even if you don't have an experience with BIML, I'm sure that you can guess what this does. It's a BIML file that creates some packages. In this case, I create one package called empty package. And inside that package, I want to add some tasks. So when I start typing here, you will see this little IntelliSense pop up showing me all the different things I can do inside that SSIS package. So if I start typing here, for example, I can see execute package, execute process, execute SQL, and so on. So all of this has built-in IntelliSense that will help you create packages programmatically instead of doing it by hand. Now, this example right here is probably not very useful, but I will just show you how this works. When you've installed BIML Express, you will get this toolbar up here, and you will also get a context menu on your BIML file. So you can see here I can generate SSIS packages, check BIML for errors, add new BIML files, and so on. So if I now click on Generate SSIS Packages, it will read this code, translate it into the DTSX for my SSIS packages. You can see that it's currently generating down here. And it's a little slow in this demo since I'm running GoToWebinar at the same time. But you can see here that I now have my empty package in my SSIS project. And this is, to be honest, this is completely useless, and it would probably take you less time to just create an empty package like this. But let's take a look at how we can use this with a larger example. I'm just going to delete this package because I can regenerate it at any time I want to from my BIML script. So let's take a look at how we can create a package where we have a couple of more things going on than just creating an empty package. So in this case here, I'm creating some connections. I have my admin, WWI, and staging connections. I'm creating one package to load my warehouse colors table. And this example is a very simple staging pattern and data warehouse environment where I want to truncate and load a staging table. So I want to delete everything in my destination table, my staging table, and then reload it with data from my source. So I define a variable right here, and then I go in and actually create my tasks. So the first thing is an execute SQL task where I truncate the destination table, and then I move into my data flow. And inside my data flow, let me just scroll down here a bit. Inside my data flow, I have my OLEDB source, my derived columns, my row count, and my OLEDB destination. And then moving out of our data flow again, I have my execute SQL task where I actually log the number of rows loaded. So this BIML file here is human readable, it's human writable, and even if you've never seen BIML before or written any of this code, if you've seen an SSIS package, you can kind of imagine what's going on in this package right here. So if I generate this SSIS package, you will see that it will show up in my project up here. I can open up this one. And I do apologize for the delayed response times here on my computer, but here we go. Like we saw in the file, I have my truncate execute SQL task, my data flow, and then my log rows execute SQL task. And inside my data flow, I have my source, my derived columns, my row count, and my destination. So this is a way where you can create complete SSIS packages from BIML. Then the final demo that I'm going to show you here today is how you can actually load all the tables from a source database. So in this case here, I'm starting to add some BIML script to my flat BIML code. BIML script are these little code nuggets that you can see here highlighted with yellow. Inside of these code nuggets, I can write C# or VB code to do some scripting and automating. So in this case here, I connect to my source. I then say source connection, get database schema, and then I'm adding import option dot exclude views. This basically goes into my source connection and gets all the metadata from that database. So it pulls out all the information about my tables and columns, my indexes, my keys, and so on, except for the views, because I've specified that I only want to get the tables here. And then the rest of the package is pretty much the same as I showed you earlier, except I've added this little loop here around the packages. So now I'm saying for each table in my source metadata, table notes, so get all the metadata for my tables, and then for each table, create one package. And then I'm just pulling out some information here like the table schema and the table name, and I'm using these expressions all throughout my script here. And now when I'm working with BIML, I can see this expanded BIML preview here. So if I click on Update button, you can see that it's now compiling BIML, and it's actually going in and pulling out that metadata from my source database. And it's creating this script so I have all of this flat BIML for each of my tables. And this just takes a little bit of time here because it's pulling all of that data. But now you can see where in my code it says load table.schema.
Catherine,
yes?
I really hate to interrupt you, but we are running out of time.
Yes, give me 2 more minutes and I'll wrap up here in just a second.
Okay, we only have 1 minute.
It says 55 on my clock. I apologize for that, but I will wrap up here very quickly. So just to show you, it now has all of these tasks. So if I go in and right click and say generate SSI as packages, it will create one package for each of my table. So moving back very quickly, if you want to learn more, go to bimlscript.com, and by saving all of this time, you can do all your work on Monday and take a break the rest of the week. So that was it for me here today. And this was a whirlwind tour, and we had to finish up quite quickly here. But if you do need any help, feel free to reach out to me or go to my website to find all of my resources here.
Yes, great work, Catherine. Next speak, it will be with Ben Miller, PowerShell for DBAs. What's in it for me? And yeah, that's all.
Great. Thank you so much, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.